You are whole and capable no matter where you're at and what you're going through. Need help accessing that capability and the answers already within you? I've now opened several one-on-one trauma-informed coaching spots to do just that. Visit humanamplified.com/episodes/101 to schedule your free discovery call and learn if trauma-informed coaching with me is for you. I'm your host, Brandy Fleck, and this is Human Amplified. We're on a mission to revamp society by amplifying your humanity. This week on the show...
Hi, my name is Octavian Pantis, and I'm based in Bucharest, Romania, Europe.
Hello everyone, I'm Emil Dobrovolschi, and I'm also in Bucharest preparing for my flight.
These are the biggest changes of our generation, and it's up to us to choose the map we use for this reality.
When you are in a crisis, just pull your chair back, have a better overview. When you accept that you are not perfect, this is the real challenge and the real lesson for leadership.
Today we're talking to entrepreneur, author, and public speaker Octavian Pantis and his friend, Captain Emil Dobrovolschi. He's a pilot instructor, and pilot examiner. They're both based in Bucharest, Romania, in Europe. Octavian and Emil are co-authors of their book, Dark Cockpit. In his spare time, Octavian loves to collect and study old maps. Emil spends time with his family and rides his Harley-Davidson all over Romania with his wife. We start out this episode by connecting these interests to their leadership approaches and how it's all related to keeping a big picture view of life as a way to manage change, no matter how big or small. This episode is for you if you're looking for creative ways to have a smoother life, even in times of loss or post-trauma. Octavian and Emil explain techniques in being prepared, or being in control, as these leaders would call it, leadership, whether in your personal or professional life, and excellent communication. Not only do they explain how each area works to create more ease and peace of mind, but they give us personal stories and examples from aviation to help illustrate the points. At most, you'll walk away from this episode thinking about what leadership means to you and how you can leverage techniques used by pilots to handle crises that are coming up at this late point in the pandemic, whatever that may look like for you. Perhaps that means making better informed decisions or educating yourself in an area you feel unsure about, or maybe it looks like perspective shifts to find what's working amid the change. At the very least, if you're afraid to fly, you'll realize how many safety preparations go into keeping a flight smooth and perhaps gain some confidence in air travel. It was such a pleasure talking to these genuinely kind, caring, and insightful guys. Enjoy. For the links mentioned in this episode, visit the show notes at humanamplified.com/episodes/101. I would love to welcome you both to the Human Amplified podcast. I'm very excited to have you here today. How are you guys doing?
We're fine, thank you. Thank you for having us on the show, and hello to everybody who's listening or watching.
Thank you very much for the invitation. I'm very busy flying, and I'm busy doing speeches here and different conferences and different audiences. So in between my flights, I'm very busy.
Yeah, it sounds like it. And that sounds very exciting. And we're going to talk about how some of those experiences apply to our listeners' lives. But first, will you please introduce yourselves? Tell our listeners a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Hello, my name is Octavian, and you could say I have three hats. The first one is I'm an entrepreneur. I've been an entrepreneur for 22 years now. We have a company in the training and development industry, working with multinationals as well as entrepreneurial companies, helping them grow, helping them build a healthy company culture, and helping them building a stronger leadership teams. My second hat is I'm an author. I wrote 4 audiobooks on personal development and also one book on time management and work-life balance. And together with Emil today, here in the podcast, we wrote the book Dark Cockpit, which taps into the treasure of know-how from aviation and makes it available for people who are not piloting a plane, but who are piloting their own projects, their own lives, you can say, their own professional careers, or their teams, if that's a responsibility. And my third hat is I'm a trainer myself and a speaker to audiences large and small.
And I'm Emil Dobrovolschi. I'm a pilot. I'm a professional pilot. I have more than 30 years now as a professional pilot, and I have 28 years flying for the same company, the Romanian national carrier. And I did some short-term contracts in Ireland or in Egypt, other places of the world. And for the last 18 years, I'm an examiner with the European Union Aviation Safety Agency. And I'm checking people, I'm checking professional pilots to revalidate or renew or issue their license, the flying licenses. Mm-hmm. I'm also a speaker. For the last 7 years or so, I'm giving speeches in front of different audiences, especially in Romania, both in English and Romanian, about the things we are doing. The professional pilots, we are doing them in our job, and I found them very useful for other businesses, for other parts of industry where people are professional, they have the same goal, the same challenges to perform well, to finish their tasks in a timely manner.
Okay. Thank you for those lovely introductions. I'm going to dive into some of your hobbies and your personal lives for just a minute so we can get to know you before we really start talking about communication, leadership, and control, which is what I know the three main points in your book. So, Octavian, I know that you collect old maps. What do you have and what is interesting about it to you?
Yeah, well, maps are fascinating, and I collect and study old maps, and the collect part is very small, much smaller than the study part. I have a few. What's fascinating about maps, and I'm talking about geography maps, not as much about political maps like country borders, because they change in time, obviously, but the geography maps, those that are 300, 400, 500, or even more years old. They're different. The way they shaped a certain island, the Mediterranean Sea, the continent it's slightly different than it is today. And it's not because there was a drawing error. It's not because the young apprentice did not pay attention to what his master told him to draw, but it's because that was what they knew at the time. With their knowledge, with their tools, with their capabilities to travel and study, that was it. And now we know more. Now we know that a certain island that they marked as northwest to southeast, now we know it's longer than that, and it's north to south, for instance. And what that tells us is that people change, and the way we see the world changes, and that we're always work in progress. And sometimes the more errors I find in a map, the more vivid is for me the following message. If I look at what I have done some years ago, I might look at them and say, oh, I could have done that. I could have done that way better than I did, whether it was a small thing, a proposal to a customer or something, or some bigger decisions. So the challenge then is even more important for me, and I guess for all of us, to really take into account as much as possible when we make the big decisions, because we don't want to look back at them in 6 months, 2 years, 5 years and say, oh my God, that's so far out that it's hard to do. So it's fascinating to see what people knew, what they believed was true, and how they marked different continents, islands, and everything. And you never get bored. It's of course, all museums are good. All museums are fast. Everybody has their own preferences. But when you go into a museum of maps, you can stay there for hours. And if you're curious a little bit, just to dive deeper into what people have drawn there and draw conclusions from you today.
Yeah. That is a really fantastic perspective and explanation of that I hadn't thought about before in depth.
Thank you.
Do you know if the actual, even though our perceptions of the way we are viewing the world has changed, was the geography actually changing itself too? So like, was the world changing as we were changing?
Yes. I mean, of course, there are the big things, right? Columbus went around the world. He thought he arrived in India and called them Indians. They were not Indian. So these are the big ones. But there are several smaller details, for instance, some islands or a sea or something. We know now that they look differently to how it looked then. So it's easy to say, this map is not good. And whoever made it, you say, oh, that guy really did not know his business. But that guy might have known his business way better than I know my business now. But that was the best of their ability to do that thing now. And of course, perception change. Now we have an accurate, and Emil can talk for hours about GPS and maps and how aviation uses that. And they can, even if it's 100% fog, they can land the plane in a big airport if they had the ILS, instrument landing system. It's not like, it's just fog. I thought this was New York, but it turns out it's Boston. That never happened today. So now we know. But whenever we look at an old map that, hey, come on, my country or my area or my lake or my whatever does not look like that, I think there's a learning there. Mm-hmm. What we do now can be judged in the future. Oh, that was a very poor decision. We don't want people to say about us, those were idiots. So therefore, what can we do? Take into account everything before we make an important decision. You can say, the world doesn't care. Yeah, but you'll care. You will want to look back in 6 months or 6 years or 15 years and say, that I should have taken the left option at that crossroads. Not the had I only listened to a few more people, I would have made a better decision. And for instance, if I may just comment 30 seconds more, we're going through the pandemic now, right? Mm-hmm. For 1.5 years now. In terms of how people work, these are the biggest changes of our generation. I'm talking about the so-called knowledge workers. If people work in a factory, they still need to report to that factory. If you're a bus driver, you cannot work from home. If you're a surgeon, you cannot work from home. But if you work in an advertising company, if you work in an IT company, you can work from home. So there are many changes. And these changes provide us, me, you, everyone who watches or listens to us, with a number of opportunities. And it's up to us to choose the map that we use for this reality. We can look and say, oh my God, there's so much instability, uncertainty. I don't know what I want to do. My employers don't know. My employer does not know. They tell me, come to office, don't come to office, get vaccinated, get tested as well. I don't know, I'm home. Some other people look at it differently. Hey, I've always hated the commute, how long it was, right? Mm-hmm. I've always worked in an open space where I took my headphones with me to get some silence, right? So now I'm in a slightly different situation. How can I use whatever is going on to shape the kind of work life for me that's good for me, for my family, for what I want to achieve in life? And if there's something that you wanted to change for years, now is the time to ask for it.
Yes.
3 years ago, if in many companies, if you wanted to work from home a day a week or a day a month, or a day a week, nobody dared to say, but a day a month, you would have to fill in a form which is similar to the, can I get a holiday out of my 21 or 23? Mm-hmm. Now, you can make requests that all of a sudden seem reasonable, but you have to decide what it is that you want. Because if you keep complaining, then nothing good will come of it. So it's a time of opportunity. And the invitation for everyone is to really, really choose, get informed well, talk to whoever you want to, but choose and make the ask now, because it's much more likely that you'll get a positive response than it was 2 years ago, especially if you're good at what you're doing. If you're good at what you're doing, you can ask for almost anything. If your job is hanging by a thread of hair, I hope they don't fire me, I hope they don't fire me, then the situation is different. But if you're good, and I'm sure you're good at what you're doing, then your negotiation power has increased, because you've been in that team for years. Mm-hmm. Your manager knows that they can leave you alone and you'll get the result. The last thing they want is that you say, oh, I want to leave and have a new person and have to spend time to instruct, and nobody's next to them. So it's going to take 6 months for them to teach the new guy in online what they would have taught them in 3 weeks.
Yeah.
So that's even more an incentive for them to keep you. So it's an opportunity there.
Opportunity. Absolutely. And I'm already drawing a connection between why you guys came together to collaborate. I feel like, you're looking at these maps and you're interested in geography and you sort of have a bird's eye view of the world in that way. And Emil, you have a bird's eye view of the world when you're flying and doing all of these things that you've been doing for years. So when I say the phrase, the bird's eye view, how does that perspective help you excel in life? And what does it mean to you?
Actually, the way I'm doing my job, me and my colleagues, being in a container, in a pressurized container, which is my aircraft actually, because we put life in a metal tube with chairs.
Yeah.
Without us, we'll just sit there on the tarmac, isn't it? So the way we are trained to solve the things by ourselves when we are at 39,000 feet flying with 500 miles per hour, this is a character shaping experience. So the leadership you'll find in our aviation industry, it's without equal somewhere else because we practice it every day. You know, it's a challenge when you have a new team every day to present in front of them as a leader, not as a boss. So in order to make them follow you, in order to let them know what are the common objectives, because sometimes you are in the same, let's not say about an aircraft, but if you are in a business and you're not sure if the other colleagues or members of our team, of your team, they're having the same objectives as you have, they're not on the same page all the time. Mm-hmm. Sometimes in the simulator, when I'm examining pilots, professional pilots, because of some gaps in their training, I can see that they're flying, actually, they're both in front of me, but they're not in the same aircraft. And this starts with the captain, the leader, who doesn't know how to make the other one understand, how to communicate with the team members in order to have them on the same aircraft doing the same flight all together. So this is a shaping experience for us, because we know when we close the door of our aircraft and we take off with it, from that moment on, you cannot set the parking brake mid-air to ask somebody for help. You cannot stop the aircraft, freeze it in the mid-air or whatever, cruising altitude, to ask for help, call a friend. So we know that only us, with our knowledge, with our skills, and with our soft skills, we are the only ones that can resolve the situation. And of course, like many other industries or like many other businesses, we are in a hostile environment in aircraft. You are in the aircraft, it's pressurized, it's well conditioned, you can rise the temperature or drop the temperature, you can ask for a coffee. But all this can suddenly change. And from this very cozy environment, you can turn into into a chaos, a nightmare if you don't know what to do.
Yeah.
So to manage this level of stress, flying every day, actually, from A to B with passengers, because this is my project, this is my job. Mm-hmm. And to manage this level of stress, you need some special skills. You can develop, you can train, but it's only in aviation sometimes. And I think in the book, we put something on the table, some subjects. They are a challenge for everybody in any industry, for anybody who lead the team of 2 or 10 or 100 people.
Okay. So does anything that you do in aviation apply to your love for riding your Harley?
I was a little bit thinking about you ask him about his hobby, nothing about my hobbies.
Oh, it was coming. It was coming.
No, actually, I'm spending my entire life with my family, actually. So I have 3 children, and most of the time I'm spending time with my little one. She's only 3.5.
Oh.
So they are occupying my family my entire time. When I have a gap, I'm listening to music, I'm watching movies, and when I have time for myself or together with my wife, we are riding our Harley Davidson along Europe, all around Europe.
That's amazing.
I just came back. Look, I'm putting together work and pleasure. I just came Sunday from my training center in Sofia. It's about 400 kilometers away. I went there in November. Everybody thought I'm crazy, riding my Harley the way and back. So this is my hobby.
Yeah. Okay. We are going to dive into the topics in your book, but I would love to know how you guys met.
This is a story. This is a story Octavian tells better. So
Okay.
I will let him do.
In short, I was flying on vacation with my family, and we were flying Tarom, the national airline. And the flight everything was fine. But what was a little bit different to other flights was that whenever the captain addressed the passengers at the beginning of the flight and then right before approach and landing, we could understand 100% of what he was saying. Now, I'm sure you, Brandy, and our listeners or viewers have been in flights where a captain speaks and you have absolutely no idea what they're saying, right? It's like they're holding their nose and going like, welcome to this is 5123 from New York to LA. You get some clues like the temperature outside is minus something and say, okay, I'm going to stay inside, but you don't. So I asked one of the flight attendants, say, excuse me, who is the captain of this flight? Because I would like to just say hello and say, oh, it's Captain Emil Dobrovolschi. And that's how we met. And then we stayed in touch, and we invited Emil to come speak to our team several times about what happens in aviation, to take us behind the scenes in the cockpit, and how do you make decisions there, and how do you manage risk. And we were all fascinated. And not only that the stories were interesting, but they were valuable to us. We could take ideas and apply them into our lives. Let me quickly just give one.
Yeah.
There's an example we discuss in the book, and that Emil says that, hey, imagine that there's an emergency landing somewhere, and then one engine is on fire, and it's night, and it's foggy, and after the plane comes to a full stop, what is it that the captain does? And he asked us, and we our hands went up and said, extinguish the fire. Said, no, communicate with the tower. No, tell the flight attendants to open the, no. And whatever we're saying, he said, no. And so, okay, what is he doing? Is he sleeping? He said, no. In the cockpit, by design, in a moment like that, the co-pilot is very busy. The co-pilot is the one extinguishing the fire, communicating, and doing a number of other things that need to be done in that situation. Mm-hmm. The flight attendants, again, by design, are very busy. They're checking what's outside. They're looking at the passengers, preparing them for the emergency exit. What does the captain do? And please notice the phrasing. It sounds a little bit unusual. They don't make a decision. They build a decision, meaning they are by design in the standard operating procedures, in what everyone should do. They are left with some space there so they can take into account all the information that's going on so that they can make the best decisions. What side are we going to go out, and what are we going to do next? And what? So they build this. By contrast, so we say it's useful to us, right? By contrast, if there's an emergency in an entrepreneurial company or even a multinational company, who is the busiest in the room? The boss, right? It is them who make all the calls, who talk to all the people, who they just send people, get me coffee, get me whatever, but it's a lot is they become the node of communication and decision making. And that's not good because they're limited as amazing as they could be. Their time is limited, their capacity is limited. So in aviation, by design, this is avoided. The captain, the most experienced one in that cockpit, is not busy with things that someone else can do, but is given some space to make the right decisions in order to save everybody. We took Emil as a speaker to some of our clients, and every time, whatever the industry was, banking and pharma and IT and whatever, again, two things happened. Oh, great stories. And number two, useful to us with many insights. So about 3 years ago or 2 years ago, I said, Emil, you have to write a book because there are so many principles in aviation. There's so much rationale for doing things right, for communication, leadership, and especially managing risk. Yeah. Because the stakes are high. Mm-hmm. Right, you should write a book. And then luckily for me, he said, why don't we write it together, Octavian? So we did. The name of the book is Dark Cockpit. It came out in English this summer, so a couple of months ago. It's available on Amazon and everything. And the feedback we have from that is very good. People from all walks of life have bought it. People who are, 30, 50 years old, they've bought it for themselves. They bought it for their kids. They've bought it for their parents. The companies have bought it as a gift to employees, as a gift to customers, and so on. And we get this feedback that, oh, it's fascinating, and we're learning. We also got a very good feedback that was not intended, but it's welcome from people who are afraid of flying. because they are, and that happens. We've not once, several times, we had the feedback. Now I know how much preparation goes into every flight, and how many layers of safety there are there in aviation.
Yeah.
And I feel a little more confident for flying, because some people, they're afraid to fly, but still they have to for various reasons, right? So maybe you've seen them, if they sit next to you, they hold the handle, and they especially take off. And so now people like that now are a little more confident, because the book we wrote is not a science book for people who are passionate about aviation. It's not for pilots. No, it's for normal people, you would say.
Yeah.
And it's not a list of accidents and what you can learn. It's not his biography. Maybe he'll write that one day, but it's a how-to book. So it's easy to read, easy to connect to whatever it is that we're doing. And if somehow the internet connection stops now, just remember this message. Hey, in the biggest crisis, who is the busiest? In real life, it's the entrepreneur. We are in aviation, because we know there are many limits to that. Mm-hmm. The captain is given space, and everybody else who can do different things, the tower, the co-pilot, the flight attendants, the fire escape, the fire team who comes to extinguish the fire, they are very busy. The captain is given time to reflect, not hours, but sometimes a few minutes are enough to avoid maybe a very bad situation.
Yeah.
If I may, I want to refer to this example, because actually in my history of being an instructor, I saw some of the pilots, the most unexperienced ones, I call them the orchestra men. They try to impress somebody. They're very well equipped with skills and competencies, and they want to do everything by themselves. Sometimes it works, but sometimes it doesn't. So in aviation, when the passengers' lives are in our responsibility, to see somebody which is in a hurry or wants to do everything by himself or by herself, and then to evacuate the passengers on the side with an engine running because they skip some lines on the emergency drill. This is not the way we do things. And the captain, I don't know, I know Octavian doesn't like this word, but when I told him the story, I said, what the captain is doing, everybody try to figure it out. But I said, no, the captain does nothing. Pulls his chair back to have a better overview. And this is the best way to act when you're in a crisis. Just pull your chair back, have a better overview, delegate your responsibility. Some of the responsibilities, some of the actions can be done by your crew because they are professionals, they are trained, they are there for a reason. So if they do that, they will do their part, and on their shoulder, there'll be some responsibility of what they are doing actually.
Yeah.
So this is the best way to come out with an outcome. And always this outcome is better than the one with the orchestra man doing everything by himself or by herself because she or he knows better.
This is really great. And I think it could apply to just, not only a business setting, but everyday life too. And some of the biggest takeaways I think that our listeners need to get from what you guys just said are give the captain space so the captain can have a better overview, and also educate yourself so that you don't have to be afraid of something, whether it's flying or anything. Learning more about it and having that transparency into it will give you confidence. That was a really good takeaway. We're talking to entrepreneur, author, and public speaker Octavian Pantis and pilot instructor, and pilot examiner Emil Dobrovolschi. Their latest book is called Dark Cockpit. It's time for a quick break. I'm your host, Brandy Fleck, and this is Human Amplified. There's a long wait to get into most mental health practitioners right now. I hear that may be the way it goes for some time as we recover from the imprint of the pandemic and continue to deal with the aftermath and even new developments in our chaotic society as they come. Trauma-informed coaching isn't a replacement for therapy, but in the interim, in tandem with, after, or on its own, it can definitely help get you moving in the direction you want to go in a safe and gentle way while processing the emotions of the present moment. I'm specifically equipped to support your self-healing in trauma recovery, provide life coaching, or both while minimizing triggers and going at your pace toward your specific goals. Sound like just what you need? Find out if trauma-informed coaching with me is for you by scheduling your free discovery call at humanamplified.com/episodes/101. Now, back to the show. We're talking to Octavian Pantis and Captain Emil Dobrovolschi. Their latest book is called Dark Cockpit. I would love to transition into, and I want to go backwards through your main points in the book and talk about control first. Why is control important? And I'm not totally sure if it's related to the example you guys just gave, but let's see if it is.
Actually, in the book, we have many examples of how to be in control and how to manage the level of stress, as I said earlier, because this is the main part. And I have some stories, they are in the book, some stories are not in the book. And just a week ago, we had one of the aircraft returning because one of the engine was stalling. They ingested 2 large birds in the engine.
Oh, no.
And so actually the whole airport looked at this aircraft taking off with huge bangs from the right engine and the flames coming out, or wings of fire coming out of the right engine. That loud it was. And so what they did, they took off and they returned immediately. And they did it in such a manner that no one passenger, nobody left the aircraft. They were re-embarked in other aircraft. They went to the next destination. Amazing, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I spoke with the captain, and he's a very experienced captain. And he told me that he was not, of course, and on these situations, in situations like this, there's a startling effect on everybody. Yeah? I can get scared in a second, yeah? Mm-hmm. But pilots are trained to look for the future. They anticipate things. And in the critical moments of flight, we have landmarks. So we have landmarks of speed, landmarks of altitude, landmarks of time. So we are flying from landmark to another to anticipate. If something happens to 100 knots, is something I will do. If something happened to a certain speed, there's something else I will do. And then based on altitude, on base of the situation, I know what to do in case of an emergency. And what he just told me a few days ago, he said, look, I didn't get scared at all. It was exactly like in the simulator. The only thing is, he said, I can see the light coming, and in the passenger cabin, the whole fuselage, the whole cabin was lit on a side with these bangs. And he said, we took off. It was exactly like in the simulator. So we did what we knew to do. What we knew to do. We rejected. We reduced the idle that engine. They returned. And I was thinking, just today. He told me at the end something which is so encouraging, because he told me, he said, look, the purser, she didn't call me at all until we were about to land to give me the cabin ready. Because she knew, she told me afterwards, he said, that we are busy. And in those moments when you have to deal, of course, it's the task sharing in the cabin, and we know everybody what to do. One is pilot flying, taking care of the flight itself. The other one is talking to the tower or managing the situation, reducing engine, stopping systems, and things like this, doing emergency drills in the cockpit. Mm-hmm. To add on this, not a chaos, but it's a stressful situation. To add on these calls from the cabin, you should answer, because maybe she's concerned that you are incapacitated or something. So she will call you, and just to tell her, okay, take your seats, or things like this, we're in this situation, which they did eventually. But she didn't call. So she waited until they finished their emergency drill. And that means that they were on the same aircraft, the same page. They know exactly what to do. Mm. So this comes in support of what I said earlier.
Yeah. What Emil is describing here, if I may, is an excellent example of at least 3 people, pilot, co-pilot, and the chief flight attendant, the purser, being very skilled, very capable, very knowledgeable about what they need to do. And they avoided something which could have ended in the news and with horrific consequences. It would be great if in real life we arrive at this level? How can we get to that level?
Yeah.
Because there are many things we cannot control, right? We believe that up there it's God who is in charge of everything, but there are things that we need to do. So one particular thing that we can do is become very good friends with a certain question, and that question is, what if? What if? So whenever you start something, of course, there's planning into it, of course, but ask yourself this question repeatedly. What if that goes wrong? What if that happens? What if that happens? And at least mentally think about what you'll do if that happens. If it's a high or very, if it can have very bad consequences, even if the likelihood is very low, there should be some formal preparations for that.
Yeah.
But this is a good question. What if? Captains, when they take off, they never say, okay, let's see if we can manage this today. It would be great if we do. No, they don't. They do all the preparation. And what was amazing for me to learn from Emil and from studying aviation in these 2 years that took us to write the book is that we see the captains in the airport, right, in the terminals with the entire crew. We move to the side. They go confidently with their hats and everything. And so, and it feels like they're 10 feet tall, for instance. Yes. But please notice, there's a checklist for every single stage of the flight, which means that something is written. There's a list with, you need to do this, you need to do this, and they check it, the co-pilot and the pilot. They do that, they go through that checklist every single time. For instance, they fly from the home airport they fly from A to B. In airport B, maybe they don't even leave the cockpit. Maybe passengers disembark, aircraft is clean, new passengers come on. So in maybe 45 minutes, 1 hour, they fly back. Not once do they say, come on, the checklist on fuel and everything. We know the fuel. We just checked it 20 minutes ago. They don't say that. They do. And they don't think it's beneath them to do that. Again, parallel to companies, if you work with an executive and there's an important meeting coming up, and if you go to him or to her and say, hey, there's a checklist for the success of this meeting. Do we have the agenda? Do we have it? Now that executive might say, come on, this is not my first rodeo. I've been doing these for 20 years. In aviation, pilots don't say, I've been flying. Emil has been flying 16,000 hours. Now imagine that's a lot, right?
Yeah.
They don't say, come on, I know the checklist by heart. Let's not do it. Let me just look around. Everything's fine. It's been a long day. Let's just fly home. They don't do that. And they don't think it's beneath them. Sometimes we find excuses. I've done this several times. I know this road like the palm of my hand, or I'm too much in a hurry now. The other call took longer, or I don't want to, we have some new people in here. I don't want to, I'm the old guy, but I read checklists from a paper as if I'm new guy. I don't want to do that. And because we don't do this now and then, sometimes, let's be realistic, maybe not a disaster happens, but maybe it's a negotiation out of which I don't get what I could have got because I was not well prepared, or because I was less prepared than the other party, for instance. Or there's a delicate discussion with somebody in my team and I was not able to solve that somehow, and I did not see what could have been done, and the person left, for instance, and it's hard to replace them. So the invitation for everybody is become friends with we may have a dog or cat, that's fine, but also become friends with the what if question.
Yeah.
Because sometimes that's all it takes. In aviation, it's manuals and manuals, but the principle is the same. Hey, you're up there. What if that happens? What will you do then? I'll do this, I'll do that. And in the example Captain Emil just gave, people were prepared and everything went smoothly. And no one got scared and no one said, I don't want to fly again for 10 years with all that bang. And just imagine being on that plane on 7F, for instance, right? And watching the fire and the noise. You don't feel like, okay, please move to aircraft B and you'll still go to Paris. Some people say, I'm not going anywhere unless it's a bike or a car.
Yeah.
But no, everyone went. Why? Because things were done well.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, okay. So I want to see if you guys can apply some of your expertise to a situation where I know, so a lot of our listeners might be going through a healing journey. They've had trauma in their past and they're trying to break negative cycles in their life. And so a lot of times in these journeys, they're told, acceptance and surrender and vulnerability are ways to heal. But also, I can see the value in being prepared and controlling a situation to alleviate fear. So where's the line between like vulnerability and needing to be prepared and having control?
The only answer that people should give to this, if they want to surrender, that's something else, because surrender sometimes has a different value for anybody. But if your plans are to continue because you are in a bad situation now, let me give you my example. Last year, I was only flying the humanitarian flights I was volunteered for. So I was flying only in my overall with my face shield and masks and 2 pairs of gloves and special shoes and things like this in the cockpit. But other than that, there were just a few a month. And other than that, I was sitting on the ground. Me, the examiner, the test pilot, the train captain looking on an empty sky. I felt that I lost my meaning as a professional. Mm. I was no longer needed, isn't it? Aviation was on the ground, was grounded, all the aircraft. When I went for my flights, just a few flights a month, I was seeing the empty parking lots, just my car there. I was not even there to laugh about it because it was such a strange situation.
Yeah.
The empty aircraft, to see in huge airports in Europe, jumbos parked on the runways because there was no space on the aprons or on the taxiways. This is a very strange situation for us. Mm-hmm. And I felt myself out of my world, but I knew that the aviation, when we'll start again, the post-pandemic era will start somehow, somewhere, sometime. Mm-hmm. So I knew that aviation would be the first to start. And my next question was, it will start with whom? Who will be the one setting the first step in the cockpit? It will be a trained pilot, isn't it? Mm. It will be a trained pilot with a good level of knowledge, with a good level of skills, with a good attitude. So I gave myself the example I gave for, now and then we have some upgrade exams from co-pilot to captain position. It's a huge leap for a person, because this responsibility you cannot teach to somebody. So that meter from the right hand of the cockpit to the left hand on the captain's seat is huge. And sometimes, of course, people are failing the exams. Sometimes they are well trained, they have a good level of knowledge, but they fail. But sometimes they come with this excuse. They'll say, yeah, if I only knew that there'll be an exam, I will learn more. So my advice was, come on, you're reading, you're keeping yourself at a high level of competencies just for an exam, just for if you'll be upgraded something. You're not doing this for yourself to be a well-prepared professional every day. So I applied this advice on me. So what I did last summer, on the ground, looking on an empty sky with no trails whatsoever, no aircraft on the sky.
Yeah,
I was to read a lot. I was to prepare myself. And being an instructor, I went to so many simulators to train people because my company did a sacrifice and paid for the training of their pilots. Mm-hmm. So what I did, I was with them 100%. I was not in the pilot seat, but I was looking and I actively imagined myself in the seat, and I actively imagined myself managing the situation on board. So doing that and having this attitude, when it started again, I was well prepared and eager to fly again.
Yeah, that's really helpful. It sounds like you shifted your perspective. You let yourself feel the emotions, but you still moved forward with that perspective shift to get things done.
Otherwise you'll surrender to, you feel out of luck, you feel lower than you should, and
yeah,
this will affect you 1 month, 2 months, 3 months. What about 6 months if mm-hmm. you do this? So this will affect your mental health somehow.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you for that. Let's go into leadership now. Is it important to be a leader in all areas of your life? And maybe this is a 2-part question. If there's already a leader, how is it possible for everybody to be a leader? Like, don't we need some followers?
Let me start with a short example.
Okay.
Look, in my business, being a leader doesn't mean you're the big boss and you know better than anybody else. If in a cockpit, I have a very unexperienced co-pilot, and when I ask about the situation, what is her or his opinion, and if her opinion or his opinion is better than mine, I will immediately adopt that solution. I will adopt that solution. I will tell them that it's better than mine, and I will tell next day to everyone, look, I was in a flight and I had two options, and this guy's option was better than mine, and we adopted it. We went there, we diverted to that airport because actually it was better than my idea, my original idea. This will make one of my stripes fell down or my arm or more from my shoulder. Not at all. And I'm lucky that on my personal life, I have a partner, my wife, and we are really partners. Nobody's the boss in the family. We are together in this, and we feel ourselves like we are in a cockpit. Sometimes I'm the leader, sometimes she's the leader, and we do things together in such a way. I feel home like in a cockpit all the time.
Yeah,
I'm very fortunate to have this as a relation. But if you apply this kind of leadership, when you accept that you're not perfect, and you accept that you're not human and you can do mistakes, and that you accept the feedback or criticism from others, especially from the people that are not ranked as high as you are, this is for me and for aviators, this is the real challenge and the real lesson for leadership.
Okay. Octavian, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, if I may, let me just say three quick things about recovering from suffering, trauma, loss of something.
Yeah.
In addition to what Emil said, everything said is great. And I was talking with Emil throughout the year last year, and we met a couple of times. And it's really true that he kept himself busy with things that are related to the future, not related to the past. So what can we do? Number one, we need to understand that healing or recovering, whatever we call it, takes time. For some people, it takes longer than for others. So simply expecting that I will recover, I have to recover now because the other one recovered, or is not the right. It takes longer for some, shorter for others. Number one. Number two, do not over rush it, because there's always a lesson. It could be a bitter lesson in the loss of something. And sometimes, speaking also about leaders, some leaders are rushing to, come on, we lost a customer or we lost somebody, let's move on, the future is waiting. Yes. But if we don't allow enough time for people to reflect on, to share, to open up a little bit, we go ahead, but then we'd never know when a new conflict will show up because the previous conflict was not properly solved. So if you feel like listening to a not so happy song one more day, do that. So take your time. When do you know you can move on? When you've taken out the value, what is the lesson from that from me? Again, could be a bitter lesson, but still there is a lesson there. And number three, in a loss situation, it seems that everything's in black. However, I think in all fairness, we can all agree that even when everything seems black, there's always something good there. When many things don't work, some things do work. So identify them and focus on them. In Emil's case, it was, I'm not flying now. There's empty airports. London, which used to be a packed airport all the time, there's nobody there. I can park anywhere, land anytime, no worries. It's sad, yes. But what is it? I have time to catch up. I have time to prepare even more. I have time to, let's focus on that. What is the future related? For instance, many companies have lost business last year, right? We've lost customers. Yeah. Do you still have some customers? Yeah, we still have some. Well, love those, help those, make sure they are happy. Yeah, but they're only 20% out of the 100. Yeah, focus on those. And those 20% will be the 30, will increase even more. We've lost people. Have you lost all the team? No. We've lost a couple of key people. Yeah. Have you lost everybody? No, you have to take care of those that you have left. I have more time. Fine. Spend more time with kids. So find out when many things don't work, find out what's working. And these things are even more important if you're leading the team. right? Because some people say in our leadership workshops, should the leader be an example? It's not a shoulda, woulda. The leader is an example. Everybody looks at the leader, even if it's a video call, a Zoom call, and somebody brings in a bad news. They look on the screen to see where the boss is. And if they see the boss go crazy and explode, that tells them something. And if they see, of course, if they see the boss, hey, no problem, that's exaggerated. But if they see the boss accepting, understanding, asking a few questions, and then looking for the good things and focusing on those, that's the sort of thing so you are an example. They look to you to see how you handle the turmoil, the big, and leading means sometimes you have to be the first one to show, to identify and to focus on the good things. So these are, and a leader is more important now than ever. If everything is stable, you can disappear on holiday for 2 weeks. Everybody knows what they need to do. It's the same old, same old, same old. But in storms like these, leaders get shaped, leaders become better. Some leaders lose their responsibility, respect, their job, their whatever forever, at least for a couple of years, because they've been wanting to move too fast, or they were blocked in panic and in the past, for instance. So it takes a little introspection. Take your time, but then focus on what works and build on that. Mm-hmm. Even if you're not a leader, if you are responsible for a team of 5 or 500, it's even more important that you do that.
Yeah. And speaking of loss, I know here in the States where there's a lot of talk about the Great Resignation. Are you guys experiencing that as well?
Yeah, it happens all over the world. Now, whether it's the Great Resignations or just some people shifting jobs, that remains to be seen. But it's times of change, and many people, speaking of leadership, many people are fed up with lack of respect. Of course, not everybody, but too many people have not been rewarded, not in money, in kindness, in words, in thank you for what they were doing. They were treated like they're expendable, and they don't want to take them. We've seen many CEOs saying, from the 1st of September, you have to be, all of you, in the office or else. And is that the best way to try to engage your people? And many people say, no, thank you. And who are the ones who are leaving? In many cases, it's the best ones who are leaving because they know they have options. So if I don't treat my people right, I'll end up with the people who don't have too many. They won't resign, but they're happy they have a job, right? So it's even more important than ever to really take care of people. That's what when we say we deal in our business with the human side of life. This is of business performance. This is what we deal with. If it's a factory, if you see it on YouTube on how it's made, how they made chewing gum and how they make rubber bands, that's not. But if it's people related, that's essential today. Otherwise, companies will lose their most valuable talent.
Yeah. Okay. I'm just sitting here processing everything you guys are saying. It's good stuff. And I want to make sure we have enough time to get everything in. So what are your best tips for clear, excellent communication? And then let's go into what are the benefits of excellent communication.
Let me start with this, because I'm telling to everybody, I'm telling to my pilots, first of all, on my briefings or my simulated briefings or post or pre-flight briefings, that the pilots are excellent communicators. Why? Because they have to pass the unequivocally the message. They don't see each other to validate because they are facing forward. They don't see each other. It's a dark environment. They have headsets on their ears. You have chattering conversation on the headset, and they pass the message without a doubt. This is one first rule. And second one is that communication in a cockpit is impersonal. You're not talking about, we are playing the ball, okay? So let me give you an example. Just a few weeks ago, I had this line flying under supervision co-pilot. It's a female, 28 years old. She's an engineer coming from another company. She just stepped into the aviation. Okay, so she's not used yet with our, let's say, rules. And I call her a commentator because she finds every time a comment which is extra. Every time I said, look, it's a timely manner, we have to solve this and this. I didn't forget about it, but I left it for afterwards. So she has comments for everything. I said, look, this is not working for you, because I give you the feedback in a way which is impersonal. You should done that 10 minutes ago. If I found it now on a checklist, I'm not saying you forgot about it, but it's not done. So just do it on a timely manner. And then we flew together to Heathrow, and she yelled at me once. She said, "Gear down." And I realized I was so focusing. My area of interest was in another part, and I didn't hear her for the first 2 times when she ordered. She was flying, "Gear down." And she find this way to reach me. She raised her voice. So she said, "Gear down." So I lowered the gear for landing, and we were landing. And then she was scared about what will be the outcome of this. And I told her, look, thank you very much, because of course it's not orthodox to do that. But this is the way you found it to attract my attention, to make me know that I didn't hear your first 2 comments. I was not tunneling, but I was concentrating on other things that moment, and I didn't hear your comments. So this is a very good way to communicate. I congratulate you. Oh, she was so couldn't believe. I said, look, this is the way we do things in the cockpit. I don't think you, if you tell me speed, because I'm not keeping the speed I said I would keep, that you say about me that I'm stupid. I cannot keep the speed. It's just a feedback helping me be better. So I accept your feedback. I accept your criticism. Every time you see something, you are obliged to say it in a cockpit. This is a very good way of communicating, because pilots are not focusing on interaction between themselves about what he said, what she said, how old is she, how old is he, how experienced, and things like this. We are focusing on solving things, and we are looking for the future. We are looking to solve things. We are looking to bring passengers from A to B in a safely manner all the time. So this is the proper way to communicate, in my opinion.
Yeah. Building up on that, so summarizing a few principles, for instance, where she said gear down. So what is one rule that we can take and apply to have a clear communication? Number one, have a clear message in your mind, what you want to say, and say it as precisely as possible, because it's one thing to say gear down. It's another one, something else to say, we're approaching the landing. We will be landing in just a few minutes, and if we don't have the landing gear down, then that's not good. So why these 2 minutes, right? What do you want? Have the gear. So this happens a lot. Some people in a team, they're complaining a lot. Is there something you want to tell me? Yes, I would like to ask for a raise, or I would like to ask for flexible hours. Fine. So have a clear message and say it as clearly as possible. Number two, if you're on the receiving end and you did not somehow understand what the message was, it happened because of the noise, because of the wording, because of whatever. Don't assume it's bad news, good news, whatever. Check for the message to be sent again, or repeat the messages to clarify that. It's better to do that on the spot than to do it 3 weeks later. Oh, I thought you asked me to do that, not this. Oh my God, what are we going to do now? The customer is waiting. It's better to do it on the spot. So have a clear message. Number two, if you're on the receiving end and didn't get it, confirm it then. So if we do these things on a kind of a regular basis, check for understanding. And when you are you're the one passing the message, don't ask, forget the question, did you understand, right? So what are people, it's unlikely to say, no, I've always been the not so smart guy in the room, I don't understand, don't fire me. No, but so it's pointless to say, did you understand? If you want to get some feedback, ask something like, okay, what are we going to do next then? Because what they say will tell you how much they understood from your 10-minute presentation in your slide deck and everything. So become friends with the what if and forget the question, did you understand? It even sounds a little bit like you're up here, they are down there. Of course we understood. What do you mean? Yeah, condescending. So rather find something else. So these are just 2 or 3 tips. What are the benefits of communication? A better life, if we talk about communication with friends, spouses, kids, and everything. If we talk about things in business, what are the benefits of communication? You avoid wasting time, wasting resources. You don't lose customer. The customer calls with a complaint. If we communicate well with that customer in that moment, showing empathy, sharing that will fix it, trying to understand what went wrong. And if the communication is good in that particular area, you'll keep the customer. If the communication is bad, it's your fault, sir, what did you mean? You'll have to, no, we cannot do that, or whatever. Communication is poor, you might lose the customer. So there are many benefits. But if I were to summarize it, better life, better business, better relationships. We all know whenever people complain that something went wrong, among the reasons, if not the first one, definitely in top 3, it's communication was poor. So start with that. Make sure that communication is good.
I love it. And on that note, guys, where can people find your book and find you?
Our book is available on Kindle, is available paperback on Amazon and everywhere. Dark Cockpit. It's an aviation term. We'll leave you the surprise to discover what it means. It's a good thing, by the way. You can reach us. The easiest place to reach us is on LinkedIn. You can easily find our names. Feel free to, if you have some questions, if anybody has some questions after today's session, get in touch with us. If you read the book and you'd like to share with us feedback, we look forward to receiving it, or have questions. And also you can find us on the webpage of the book, which is darkcockpitbook.com. And
read the chapter 5, which is on the website. It's free there as a sample of the book.
Okay.
I'm not saying it's the best chapter, but it's one of the best. And they will make you an impression of what is in the book, what is the know-how we would like to our readers to find in the book.
Yeah.
Very good. Very good. Well, listeners, all of that will be in the show notes. So be sure to go check that out. And guys, thank you for coming on the show, and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you very much. Hello to everybody. All the best to everybody.
Thank you very much for the invitation, Brandy. Hope to see you soon. And maybe in America, sometimes we'll meet when we'll be on the stage as the speakers.
That would be great. Subscribe on your favorite podcast platform and learn more at humanamplified.com. To schedule your free discovery call to see if trauma-informed coaching with me, Brandy, is right for you, visit humanamplified.com/episodes/101.